our youngest son. He has 1 year left of school down in Joplin, Missouri, where he went to Ozark Christian College and will graduate from Missouri Southern with an international business degree, hopefully this May. So he had the opportunity. Some of you have been praying for him. Some of you supported him financially. So anyway, we'll turn it over to him, and he can tell you about his trip to Nairobi.
All right. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to share what God was doing in Nairobi this summer. I'm extremely excited to share about it. God's doing a lot of very cool things in the slums there with people that don't have very much physically. And so thank you for allowing me to be here and share this today with you. So I was with a group of 13 interns with Christian Missionary Fellowship International. And the 13 of us were there for 2 months. We left in the beginning of June, and then I got back last Saturday. And we all kind of had different areas of focus within where we worked this summer. But Christian Missionary Fellowship International, they partner with, sorry. Okay. So yeah, the group, there was 13 of us. Most of us were, there we go. Most of us are still in college or studying. There was a couple that had just graduated or graduated a couple of years ago, but it was all very young adult oriented. And we were from all over the U.S. There was some from California, some from Indiana, Illinois, a lot of Midwestern states, Ohio, but there was also a couple out on the coast as well. So it was everybody came from different places. I personally heard about Christian Missionary Fellowship from my professor and mentor down in Joplin, Missouri. Other people had heard about it through their churches, just because there's a lot of churches connected with Christian Missionary Fellowship and Missions of Hope International. But so here is the main building of Missions of Hope International. They have a direct partnership with Christian Missionary Fellowship, and so they work together to plant these centers and do the ministry that they're doing. Missions of Hope International started in 2000, so it's been around for about 14 years now. They have a very cool story. Mary and Wallace Kamau are the founders of it. And when they started it, they initially just planted one school and started out with about 30 to 40 students in the slum of Nairobi. And now it's grown all the way to, there's 13, they call them centers, but they're also schools. There's 13 centers and over 13,000 students in their schools. So it has just exploded since they started it, and it's a very cool story. And so I basically have the main three outreaches that Missions of Hope International does. The first is children in the schools. And like I said, they have 13 centers now with over 13,000 students. And the way they do that is through a child sponsorship program. And you can sponsor children in the slums that don't have enough money. Their families can't afford to put them in school. And it's a very, very cool thing that they're doing. And I'll talk more about the children later. But another thing that they do is community health evangelism. It's a practice called CHE, and basically what they do is they have social workers that are employed in Missions of Hope International, and they will go out into the community, the slums, and they will go door to door and just meet with families, meet new people, and get them plugged into Missions of Hope International and do different things about malaria education, HIV and AIDS education. And they also do checkup on the children that are in the school. They visit those families as well. And then the last main outreach that they have is business development. And that was where I spent the the bulk of my summer working in their business development and microfinance. And so I will talk a little bit more about that now. Here is just a picture of the Mathare Valley slum, and it's a very dirty, trashy place. It's a 1 square mile is the size of this community, and there are 800,000 people living in 1 square mile. And it's kind of hard to get an idea of how 800,000 people can fit in 1 square mile. But after you walk through and get an idea of how big their homes are, to get an idea would be maybe think of a bathroom, a normal sized bathroom in the States here, and maybe multiply that times 2 or 3, and that would be the size of one shanty or house in the slum there, and then put about 5 or 6 people in each shanty. And so that gives you an idea of just how crammed and packed they are into the slum there. And just the picture on the bottom right kind of gives you an idea. It's hard to tell, but so there's that one roof. There might be 4 or 5 houses underneath that one roof, but they're all kind of connected underneath that. But there's multiple houses underneath those roofs. So it's really crazy how the living conditions are just insane there. They're just jam-packed into the slum. It's very dirty and smelly. Here is some people that I worked with on a daily basis in the business development. Missions of Hope International, they have 2 offices, one in the Mathare Valley slum and one just outside of it. And so they also work in some other poor areas around Nairobi besides the Mathare Valley slum. And this is the group of people that I worked with on a daily basis. They're loan officers. And so just to give you kind of an idea of what I did with the microfinance and business development is I would go out with one loan officer every day, and what they do is they visit accountability groups. And an accountability group is made up of about 10 to 20 people that live in the slum, and they all own their own individual personal businesses. And they meet on a weekly basis with their groups to take out microloans. And it's called an accountability group because they come together each week and they have to save a certain amount of their loan. And I'll also talk about that in a little bit. They have to save a certain amount of their loan, and they also have to co-sign. Everybody in the group has to co-sign on each loan before that one person can take it out for their business. So they really do hold all of each other accountable. It's really a community family effort. And I have a couple stories that I'll share about the accountability groups that are really cool because they really are empowering these people physically, but also spiritually. And one story that I want to share about that is there's a group that I would meet with on a weekly basis. And so one day of the week we were meeting with them. Each meeting is about 1 hour long. And all of a sudden we got up and left after about 10 to 15 minutes of meeting. And I didn't really know where we were going because they were speaking in Swahili. But the whole group, we started to walk through the slum, the community, and we went and visited one of the ladies' shanties. We visited her house that wasn't at the meeting, and I found out that her brother had just passed away. And so this group got up, left what they were doing, went to her house to visit her, and it was just awesome because we sang a couple songs of worship, and then they prayed over her and her household, and really were just there to encourage her, to mourn with her, and just a testimony that these groups are more than just physical empowerment. There's a spiritual aspect to it, that God is moving. They're encouraging each other spiritually and looking out for each other spiritually. And so it's just a testimony of how powerful it really is. So I just put this chart up there to give you kind of an idea of what the loan system looks like. And so you have to be in the microfinance program for 8 weeks before you can take out your first loan. And then you also have to attend a training. And this picture I just took a picture of one of the trainings that I was able to be a part of. And so all these people that were at this training, they could take out their first loan after they had signed off on being there. And so the first loan, the max amount of money that you can take for the loan is 20,000 Kenyan shillings, which is about the equivalent of $220. And so you would have to save up, they would have to save up to 20% of that loan before they could take it out, which is about 4,000 Kenyan shillings. And then the repayment period that I have up there is 6 months. And so after they pay that off, then they can take out their second loan, which can go up to 50,000 Kenyan shillings or $570, and they have 6 to 9 months to pay that off. And so that just kind of gives you an idea of what they're working with and things like that. Some of the different businesses that the owners living in the slums had were there's a lot of salons, hair salons. They do a lot of hairstyling there. The most popular one is grocery, and so it's really like a market type setup within the slum that they sell their food. And so grocery would consist of somebody might sell 2 or 3 items: potatoes, peas, carrots, something like that, corn. And some people would sell as many as 10 to 12 different items. And they really encourage to try and sell more items, because when you are selling more items from your stand, more people will buy from you rather than buy one thing and go to the next stand, or not even come to you at all because they don't want to have to walk around to buy all their stuff. They want to get it all at one place. And so they really encourage them to expand their businesses. So that might be one thing they do with the loan, is they might end up purchasing more food to sell in the slum. Rather than 1 or 2 items, they might take out a loan and sell eight items. Some other businesses include carpentry. They build different things like beds and chairs and sell those. There are pharmacies. Their pharmacies consist of just a small little shop, but they're very organized, and they just sell different medicines. It's over the counter there, but here you would need a prescription for it. But it's really nice for us Americans when we go over there, because if something hits us hard, then we can just go buy something that'll take care of it right away over the counter rather than have to get a prescription for it, which came in handy for myself once or twice in the summer. Here's a picture of one accountability group that I would visit on a weekly basis, and Kenyans are truly just a joy to be around. They're filled with joy and a ton of passion and energy, and you can kind of see it in the picture. They just have huge smiles on their face, and they're so welcoming. This one group right here that I have a picture of, they were one of my favorite groups, because they would meet at a different person's house each week, and they would share a whole meal together. So they would prepare a meal for everybody in the group. So they would do their business, but they would also just hang out as a family, share a meal together, and laugh and have a great time. And they were just so welcoming, so loving and caring, and just one of my favorite groups that I was able to meet with. And the other picture is just a guy that inspired me living in the slums. His name is Benjamin, and he was in one of the poorest accountability groups that I met all summer. And but he inspired me so much, because he's one of the most selfless people I've ever met. Most people are just, they're meeting in these groups to take out a loan for themselves, and they want to grow their own businesses and stuff like that. But he never once told me that he never once told me about growing his own business. He had this vision for his group first, and then for the community that he lived in, because the community that he lives in is very unreached. There's not very many schools there. There's one tiny school. There's hardly any churches or any ministry going on. There's no clinic. And so his vision basically with his group is he would like to plant a Missions of Hope International Center in the village is called Kiambiu. He wants to plant eventually in the next couple of years a school, and then eventually build a clinic onto that, so that they can reach out to the community through those ministries. And so it was very heavy on my heart that this man who has nothing, doesn't even really care about his own things. He wants to help his group, and then he wants to reach out to his community. And so it touched my heart very much, and just a huge encouragement as well that he sees beyond the physical to the spiritual, and realizes that that really you need a relationship with Jesus. You need Christ, everything centered around Christ to be filled up and to be, satisfied. And he realized that and shared his heart with me, and just very encouraging. You can go to the next slide. Okay, and this is a little bit hard to read, but these are just some statistics of what the microfinance loans have done just this past quarter. And so I'll just read a couple of the stats. So there are the total number of men and women that have been helped to date today are 3,397. Let's see here. Total amount of funds loaned out this quarter, 331,000 US. I think it's US dollars, I believe. And one really cool thing is the loan repayment rate I have up there is 95.5%, which is just an incredible statistic in my mind, that 95% of the people that take out a loan are paying 100% of that loan back. And so I think that's just a testimony of how successful the loans and the accountability groups are, that 95% of the people that are taking out loans are paying them back, which in the States, that's kind of unheard of, that people would pay back their loans like that. So I think that's a really cool testimony. And then it says the number of clients who have completed training and are awaiting their first loan are 557. And the total number of new accountability groups is 9 for this quarter. And so it's still growing, it's still expanding, and that's really encouraging.
Where do they get the money to give them loans? I mean, who supplies that?
So yeah, the money to supply the loans. So when they're paying back the loans, first of all, they're paying back with interest, and so they're generating profit that way. But there's also on CMF's website, you can also sponsor. You can sponsor a loan, and so when you go on their website, you can go to their microfinance stuff that CMF is partnered with Missions of Hope and that they're doing, and it will come up with individual clients that are in the microfinance program that are asking to take out a loan. And so when you go on the website, you can sponsor the loan and support that person and their business. And so that money goes to Missions of Hope into their bank fund, and that's also the way that the funds get transferred.
Like us can.
Yes. So yeah, that's a way a lot of the money is raised. People in the States they're sponsoring a loan or sponsoring a person in their business, and so that money then gets transferred over there, and that's where they get money for the loans.
What do you charge for interest?
The interest is about 18% annual. So I think it's about 1.5 monthly. And so here's a picture of the kids. The kids they bring so much joy to you. They have smiles. They love to play. They have so much energy, and just super encouraging to be around them. They bring so much joy to you, and the ministry that Missions of Hope International is doing with the children is truly amazing. Because really the only hope that these kids have of getting out of the slum ever, or of just improving their life, is through education. So if they're not being sponsored and their parents don't have enough money to put them in school, then the chances that they're going to live in the slum the rest of their life are probably about 100%, because that's literally the only way to improve their life is through education. And so the ministry that they're doing, and just when people sponsor a child, it's just incredible. It puts them in school. It gives them meals. It gives them a safe place to be while they're in school all day. And just incredible ministry that they're doing with the children. You can go to the next one. There's just another picture with the kids. You can go to the next one. This is a friend of mine that I met. His name is Steve, and he's a huge success story because he is one of the first graduates from Missions of Hope International School, and he actually was volunteering in the business department of Missions of Hope International all summer. because he's preparing to go on to study at university. And just a super cool story, though, because he grew up in the slum his whole life. He eventually was sponsored by somebody from the States to be put into Missions of Hope International's school. And he's one of the first graduates. Not every school has a high school program because they're not big enough yet, or they don't have enough funds to put that into action. But this school, it's called Pangani, was the first school, and he was one of the first graduates from their high school. And now he's moving on to study at university, and he's been volunteering in the business department all summer, just learning the things that they're doing there. And so just an awesome success story that he's gonna be, if he wants to, he can move out of the slum. He's getting an education and just improving his life. And so just a really cool success story there. Okay. All right, now I'll talk a little bit about the food. This is a picture of chai and chapati. Their chai is a little bit different than the chai tea that we drink here, but it's a very important part of their day. They usually take chai sometime in the morning and then sometime in the afternoon, and it's really like their break from work. They'll stop working, stop everything they're doing, and they'll take chai. And it really shows how much they care about people, because work is not as much of a priority. When it's time to take chai, it's time to stop what you're doing and time to relax and socialize. And so I really enjoyed that part of the day, when we could just slow down from what we were doing and talk with the Kenyan nationals. And chapati is the other thing in the picture there. That is basically... It's kind of similar to the texture of like a crepe or a pancake maybe. It doesn't taste the same, but it kind of looks and feels the same. That's kind of more of a food that they would take for breakfast, sometimes lunch, and you usually take it with chai. It was probably my favorite food there, though. It tasted really good. Okay. Ugali, that's one of their staple foods. They really only, Kenyans have about 3 or 4 main foods that they eat. They really have a simple diet, and ugali is probably one of the main things. It's really just corn flour, cornmeal mixed with water, and then you stir it around until it becomes solid, and it's like it literally tastes like nothing, but it fills their stomachs and it keeps you full for a long time, and it's very simple. And so that's one popular food that they eat there all the time. Yeah, they boil it in water. Okay. And this was probably my least favorite food that I ate there all summer. It's called matumbo, and matumbo is intestines and stomach. And so it was an interesting experience to eat that. Chewed on it for about 5 minutes each bite. And then the green stuff is called sukuma wiki. That's basically just green cooked greens like kale, spinach, things like that. Which actually that stuff tastes pretty good. So I'd try to mix that with the matumbo there in that picture and kind of dole. Oh, okay.
I don't know why I would never eat it now, but
Yeah, and yeah, and beans and rice was another popular meal that they eat there consistently. And I think, yeah, you can go to the next slide. I think that's about it for the food. And another fun part of the summer is that I was able, our team and myself we were able to explore Kenya a little bit more than just the slum and the city. And so this is a picture. It's a place called Hell's Gate, and basically it's in the Rift Valley, which is a huge valley that goes all the way from, I think, Kenya like up north to Egypt or something like that. It's huge, but just a very beautiful countryside. And the Kenyans they encouraged us to get out and explore Kenya more, just because they have a lot of pride in their country, and they don't want us to just have a picture of the slum and the city of Kenya. So they wanted us to get out and explore. And so this is a picture of just the guys that were on the team with me this summer, and just a beautiful, beautiful place. Hell's Gate, it's a kind of a canyon in a valley that basically all the water flows into there, and it carves a path through the rocks that you end up hiking through, and just it's really, really cool and really beautiful. You can go to the next one. And then right before we left, we were able to go on a 2-day safari, and that was also in the countryside, about 6 hours outside of Nairobi, and just another beautiful, beautiful place, the countryside of Kenya. And this is a picture of mostly wildebeest and zebra, kind of hard to see, but we saw different animals. We saw elephants, giraffes, lions. I think you can go to the next picture. I think it's a picture of the lions. Yeah, we saw lions close up, and so that was a lot of fun. Really cool to see those animals in their habitat. Oh no, you're fine. But I think that about sums up everything that I had presented. I want to open it up for a time of questions. But I also just wanted to say that the work that God is doing through CMF, Christian Missionary Fellowship, and Missions of Hope International is just incredible. He's empowering these people living in the slums. They don't have anything physically, but He's empowering them with things physically and spiritually. They're sharing the love of Christ to them in everything they do. They're reaching out to children that really have no hope of getting out of the slum unless they're put through an education. And the loans that they're giving out through the microfinance are allowing people to build their businesses and in turn help themselves and their families. And so really there's just God's redeeming these slums, and He's redeeming these people and bringing them tons of hope, and just super encouraging the work that's being done over there. And so I praise and thank God for what He's doing in Mathare Valley and the slums of Nairobi. So now if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to help answer them.
Who got the meat that you got the intestines from?
The meat. Okay. So there are restaurants there are called hotels, and so there are different hotels in the slum, and so that we were eating at a hotel, and so they cook the food and prepare it and feed us there. And so there are different hotels. Some serve fish, some serve most of them serve roasted goat, roasted meat, and things like that. They always have ugali at all the restaurants because they eat that with everything. But really, a large part of where people eat is in hotels. It's different than it is here because they don't have stuff to cook with. They don't have room for it, for one, and they may not have money for another, but the hotels are very cheap, and so a lot of people eat at the hotels to feed themselves in the slums.
And that intestines they like that, don't they, the specialty?
Oh, yeah. My best friend there was Steve. He was a loan officer, and his favorite food was matumbo, the intestines and stomach. So I tried to act like I enjoyed it, but it was hard to put down. Yeah, it was probably goat intestines, and so.
Before you went, wasn't there some unrest in the country, or was there any when you were there? Were you concerned about your safety, or these guys probably felt real safe, or?
Yeah, there was some unrest going on, basically right where we were. In Nairobi. But really it wasn't directed towards Christians or anything. It was more political. And so that was one reason why it didn't feel too dangerous there. But they also, they were very careful with where they had us go, what they had us do. We were with a national at all times. So when we rode public transportation or when we would walk through the slum, we could never do it by ourselves. We always had to have a national with us. And so that made us feel a lot safer. And but there was never a time where I felt like I was in danger. And the people are very welcoming and nice. It's just the stuff that was going on over there before we got there was mostly political stuff, and really things that were outside of. It didn't really have anything to do with white people either. So So no, there was never a time that I felt in danger or anything.
What type of government?
Type of government is sort of like, kind of like a democracy, you could say. They have a president there. I think all governments are a little bit corrupt maybe, but there's a lot of corruption in Kenya, in Nairobi specifically. And so I don't think things are always run according to plan. Even if they say they have this type of government, it may not be ran exactly that way. But their police are very corrupt too. I guess one interesting story that I can share is one of the first days that I went out to get on public transportation. There was a policeman there, and so he pulled me and the national that I was with off to the side of the road and asked for my passport and visa. And I wasn't carrying my passport with me at the time just because it's not, I didn't want to lose it. So I just had a copy of it, but I didn't have the visa. And so it ended up being like a 30-minute conversation. He wanted money because we didn't have the passport. If we could have given him enough money, he would have let us go. But we didn't have enough money to give him. And so he pulls over this random car that's just driving by the road, doesn't have any idea who it is. He stops them, has them open their door, and he's like, okay, you guys get in the back. We're going to take you to jail now. And so I look at the national with me, and I'm just like, come on, dude, help me. He hasn't said anything hardly at this point. And so I don't know what to do. And so finally he starts talking. I mean, he knows what's best, so I'm sure being quiet is the best thing to do rather than trying to argue. So finally he starts talking with the policeman, and I don't know what they're saying. They're talking in Swahili. And finally we walk over to a different part of the road, and there's another officer there that's a little bit higher up. And finally he asked me a couple questions, like, where's your visa? Where's your real passport? And I told him I didn't bring it with me. And so basically he just said, like, you need to have it with you next time. And thankfully they let us go. Got away, didn't have to go to jail. So it was... Yes, they understand English there very well. Not everybody can speak it, but a majority of them can speak. Yes, a majority of them can speak a decent amount of English, which was very helpful. Kidogo. That's a little bit in Swahili. I learned more than I thought I would there. Basic greetings, and could ask, how was your weekend? How was your day? Things like that. Where are you going? Where are we going? Bits and phrases, but definitely not fluent. I would have loved to stay there longer to learn it more, but learn language more. But yeah.
In your picture with your favorite accountable group, they really all look like they're dressed up really nice. I'm thinking them in a little shanty with 5 or 6 people. We went to Haiti. When they came out for their Sunday dress, their shirts were as white as could be, and they lived in these little huts, you might say, and the shoes are shined. I mean, they really dressed up. Do you see that?
Yes, for sure. And that accountability group that you saw, they are a little bit more wealthy than some, but still, even some of the poorest accountability groups, they would be dressed very nicely. Kenyans in general dress nicely. They wear button-up shirts a lot, long sleeve, slacks, things like that. Just because I think they just take more pride in being presentable wherever they go. And so yeah, sometimes I'd sit in an accountability group and people would be dressed really nicely. I'm like, these people live in the slum? And you just have to remind yourself that, like, oh yeah, I mean, everybody dresses here nice, so they may have 1 or 2 nice outfits that they keep very nice, but they still just don't have a lot. But yeah, they dressed a lot nicer there. So.
You got your shoes shined every day.
Yeah, and they have. Shoe shining there is. I think we see it differently here. It's a shoe shining business is a business there. So it's a normal thing to get your shoes shined. Anybody that had dress shoes would get their shoes shined, and so my loan officer, he would go with me like maybe twice a week, and we would get our shoes shined there by different people. So
What would that cost?
it would cost 20 Kenyan shillings a person, and so that's the equivalent of probably less than 25 cents.
Talk about, this isn't the only slum.
No, this is not the only slum. So the Mathare Valley, over 90% of the population of Nairobi is living in slums, and there are over 3 million people in the city. And so in Mathare Valley alone, the population is 800,000. And then there's another slum called Kibera, and that's actually the biggest slum in Africa that has over 2 million. That has over 2 million people living in that slum. And so really, there's just a huge gap between the wealthy and the poor. And the majority of Nairobi lives in slums. Mathare and Kibera are not the only two. There are other small villages and communities that are slums as well. But it is pretty crazy how many people live in the slums there.
I was just gonna ask if you know their average life expectancy.
I don't know that. I'm sorry.
You were saying that there's a big gap between the poor and the wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
How wealthy are the wealthy? I mean, are they really, really wealthy and they're stealing money from basically everybody else, or are they?
Because I didn't spend a lot of time around the wealthy, I don't know exactly. But there are some communities that we drove past that had very large houses, and there is a middle class, though. It's small, but there is a middle class, which is good because that gives the people living in the slum a chance, if they want to move out. It gives them a chance for something, a little bit better living conditions, which is good. And it was cool because some of the microloans that are being given out through the microfinance are lower to middle class groups. And so I was actually able to visit some of those groups that had kind of moved out of the slum, and it's a huge difference from the groups that are the poorest in the microfinance business to ones that are moving closer to middle class. But
There's golf courses in Nairobi.
oh yeah. The city of Nairobi, there's malls. The Westgate Mall that happened a year or two ago that was big on the news here. And so it's a very modern city. There's malls, there's a golf course or two, museums, things like that.
So for us to put it like in a perspective, like for these guys to understand too, is would it be something similar to like Chicago, where you would go to the south side would be more of the slum area? I mean, there's parts like that, or is it more of a city that has, they live in the slums and then they have to move to another city that, has more money?
No, it's there's really communities. Yeah, there's communities within Nairobi. So like the Mathare Valley slum is just 1 square mile, and that's the slum, which it's not right next to downtown, but it's still it's a huge city. But does that kind of help answer it? So yeah, there's different areas within the city that are different than others. Yeah.
See a lot of other Western folks, whites?
Not really. We went to the mall a couple times, and you'd see a couple other, they call white people Mzungus, and so we saw a couple other Mzungus. Sometimes you'd see white people in the slum that weren't from our group, and so that was kind of a big deal because you don't see white people there, and so if we did, we'd yell Mzungu at them, and it was funny, but yeah, there's not very many white people, especially in the slum areas. But when you get to the more, the nicer areas, the malls and stuff, there are some other white people.
In Haiti, we noticed they didn't have very good telecommunication, but we found out a lot of them seemed to have cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't have your telephone lines and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people there seem to have cell phones for communication.
Yes, most everybody had a cell phone. Obviously not like a smartphone, but you can buy minutes for pretty cheap there. And so you go to it's called Safaricom is the phone system. And so you'd go to a shop and you'd buy however many minutes you wanted, and you just put that on your phone. So it's not expensive, but it is, I mean, it's very helpful to have a phone there, and so most people do have a cell phone.
So if a restaurant is called a hotel, then what is a hotel?
That's a good question. I only, when like short-term teams would come over and visit, they'd stay in what they call it the Grace House. I don't know. I mean, I don't think that's what they call hotels. That was just the specific one, but it's a good question.
So is that where you stayed?
No, we stayed, originally, they used to have interns stay in the city very close to the slum, but just because of the stuff that had been going on previously, they didn't want us there. And so we stayed in a community about 25 minutes outside of Nairobi from where we worked. And the girls stayed in Mary and Wallace Kamau. They're the founder of Missions of Hope International. They stayed in their guest house. And we stayed in a house about 5 minutes walking distance from there. So. At Missions of Hope, they do work like an 8 to 5 schedule, but like in the slum, it's basically just you wake up, get your stuff out in your stand in the slum, and then they just work till however late. We couldn't stay there till it got dark because it's just too dangerous there at night. But so I don't know how long they leave them open till, probably just until it's dark, I would assume. Yes, there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of different thugs and gangs within the slums, and it's cool because some of this, I didn't say this, over 90% of the staff working for Missions of Hope International is either still living in the slum or they came from the slum. Over 90% of their staff came from the slum. So some of them choose to still live there. Some of them have moved out just because they don't want their families to have to live in those conditions anymore. But one of the drivers specifically used to be a thug, and in the slum,
And what's a thug? What is?
they basically just steal and kill for whatever they want. Yeah. And so this driver for Missions of Hope, before he was converted, he used to, if he didn't get what he wanted, he would just go into a house. If they didn't give it to him, he'd kill him and take it. He'd go at night and kill him and take it. And some of the stuff that the thug members do there is just it's crazy. Like if you don't do what they say, then I mean your chances of living aren't quite as good. But so there is a lot of crime. It's interesting that because they put all of their food and all of their selling items just out on display, and so it seems like a lot of people would just steal those, But it's very interesting because I learned this after one of the interns. He had a pocket knife that got stolen, and he caught the lady, and he told her, "Hey, bring that back." And so she brought it back, and I was telling the story to one of my national friends, and they were shocked that they were like, "What happened to the lady? Like, did she after she gave it back, what happened?" And so I was like, "Why?" I was like, "She just walked away," and they're like, "Oh, okay," because when people get caught stealing there, they're either severely beaten or they're lynched. And so that explained to me why you don't steal there. Like you don't steal stuff that's just sitting in front of you, because if you get caught, then it's not going to be a good story for you. So really interesting that they do have crime, but which it goes up a ton at night, I know. But during the day, people just don't steal like that. Just community members. Yeah. And even if they got beat, it would just be multiple community members would come out and they'd just do it right there on the spot. It's very crazy.
Do they have any way to secure their little house?
Some of them have locks on it. They have wooden doors that they'll shut and lock at night, but not all of them do. And I mean, alcohol is a huge, huge problem in the slum. Alcohol in general in Kenya is you either drink and you are an alcoholic and you get drunk, or you don't even touch it. That's the way they view it there. Partially because the ones that do drink they get drunk and then they get abusive, they get dangerous, and really they just drink their lives away there. And so, but there's a lot of alcohol being made in the slums. It is a business that some people use there. Yeah. No, and yeah, their access to guns just there's not as much. But yeah, not that I know of, there's not any gun control or anything like that.
Is it easily recognizable who the believers and non-believers are?
It's not recognizable from outside appearance. We would do evangelism every Wednesday, and so what we would do is we'd just go out with discipleship officers from Missions of Hope, and we would go from house to house and just visit them and share Christ with them. And a lot of the people, they call it born again there. A lot of them are born again believers, and but some of them aren't. But they're very receptive to the gospel and very receptive to the message. But it's a highly spiritual culture. So like if we would go visit them, they would, even if they weren't believers, they would see that as a sign from God, basically, even if they weren't believers. And so that it's very spiritual. They don't see it the same as like a house visit to us is not the same as a house visit to them. And so like if a white person shows up in their house, then it's a big deal. But does that fully answer it? It's hard to tell. It is a Christian. There's a lot of Christian culture there. It's not like an unreached people group or anything like that. So there are a lot of Christians there. Oh, church. Church was a lot of fun. It's very upbeat and energetic. A lot of dancing, and so that was a lot of fun to go to church there. And again, they're very spiritual, so it's very just filled with joy and a lot of dancing. They even would sometimes have one church service we went to. They had 3 like 18 or 19-year-old boys. They came up and did like basically break dancing in the middle of the service. And so it's just very different, but that's what their culture is. It's a lot of dancing, a lot of music. Where did we go to church? We would go, so Missions of Hope plants a church at each center. And so there's not 13 churches because some of them have combined, but like each center that they've planted in the slum, they plant a church with it. And so every Sunday we would go visit a different Missions of Hope church each Sunday in the slum.
Did you learn some new dance moves or? Did you dance some?
I did dance some. Not a lot.
Where's the pictures of that?
No, I didn't put that on there. But yeah, I did dance some. It was fun. One of the short-term teams that came, they threw the Missions of Hope staff like a party one night before they went home, and they had very traditional dancers come out, and they had the music, and then they kind of had like a DJ, and so it was like everybody was dancing, and it was funny. And my best friend there, Steve, that was a loan officer. I remember like the next week, he was like, "Yeah, I saw you dancing out there." And I was like, "Oh yeah?" He's like, "You were trying." I was like, "All right." So yeah, our white people dance moves weren't quite as good as theirs, but it was fun though.
How many people would have been at a church approximately?
They were very different sizes. One church was, the size of it was honestly probably like from the pews to the wall, and then basically from maybe like the back poster there to like up here. It was smaller than that even actually, but they filled that one full. I don't even know how many people could fit in there, probably maybe 30 or 40. But we also visited a church with probably over 100, which was a bigger church there. And so there's some very small with not very many, and there's some closer to 100, 200 too, which are the bigger churches there. So.
The stuff that they're taking out to sell, they're growing themselves?
No, they buy them from like a wholesaler. And one cool story I heard that dealt with the microfinance is one lady with her loans. She was selling certain foods, but she ended up buying it from a source a little bit further and a little bit more expensive, but it was higher quality food. And so she used her loan to do that. And then it actually boosted her business because more people would come and buy food from her because it was a little bit higher quality, and she had a little bit more selections that not everybody else had just because of that.
And are they making things too to sell? Baskets or?
Oh, yes. Actually, on the back table there's a necklace that I brought, and it's actually made out of paper. And one thing that Missions of Hope International does is they have sewing and jewelry making. And so they'll bring people in from the community. They will teach them how to do it. Like the sewing program is, I think, a 6-month program. So they'll come in, they'll teach them how, and then they do employ some at Missions of Hope that make uniforms and different things like that. But they also, after they teach them that 6-month program, then that gives them, they taught them that skill. So now they can go out and if they can afford a sewing machine, or they can take out a loan, then they can start their own sewing business, things like that. And so they do that with the jewelry and sewing, which is really cool.
Are those classes free?
Yes.
They are?
Mm-hmm.
More interest by men and dads, more interest by women, moms for getting loans?
It's a lot more females than males in the taking out loans, and a lot of that is because one reason is a lot of the males they drink a lot, and so the females are trying to provide for the family, and a lot of them are also single, and so they're trying to get money for their kids, trying to boost their businesses to raise money for their kids to go to school. But it is mainly female that are taking out the loans. What's that?
Are you planning on going back sometime?
I would love to go back if God allows it. Just partially because the guy Benjamin that I showed you earlier that had a vision for his community, I would love to be a part of that. I really feel like God's put it on my heart. And so within the next 2 years, I would love to go back and see what he's doing, and love to help any way that I can. I'll be praying for him a lot, but I would love to try and raise money to help, plant that center and that, what he wants there for his community and vision. Just his selflessness just motivated me so much, and I would love to see God answer his prayers for his community. And so I would love to go back, partially for that and partially just to be part of what they're doing again. So. There are Muslims there. Is that what you asked? Okay. But like I said, it's mainly Christian. That's the most popular religion there, Christianity. But there are communities even within the slum that are mainly just Muslim. So.
Was Kenya at one time like a British colony? Is that why you think English is so prevalent?
Yes, it was. It was funny because on the 4th of July, while we were there, we had a party there was some short-termers there from America, and then our team of interns. And so with the missionaries there, we had a 4th of July party, but we were celebrating America's independence, and we were doing it in Kenya, who had been colonized by the Britons, and then we were eating at an Indian restaurant who had also been colonized by the Britons. And so it's funny just that we were in Kenya eating at an Indian restaurant celebrating our independence, and everybody from had the same story, so it was funny.
over there, or what?
Farming.
What agriculture and stuff?
Yeah, there's a lot of farming. Obviously, it's a lot different from here. Their fields are more of like a garden size, but they farm corn, a lot of corn, and beans. What else do they farm? They had like fish farms and strawberry farms, and obviously some people had the vegetables and stuff that they grew. But it was cool. The area where we lived was kind of countryside. So if you walked just outside of the community, then there was a lot of farms that you could see. And but they would do kale and spinach, things like that. And but their farms are a lot smaller scale because they do everything by hand. But it was cool to see that. One day I went out and I just talked to a guy that was farming. He was doing the Sukuma wiki plants that I showed you earlier, the green stuff, and I just had him kind of teach me what he was doing, and he just kind of showed me how he was clearing the weeds from around the plants, and just kind of teaching me how he did it. His English was pretty bad, so it was kind of hard to listen to some of it, but it was kind of cool to see how they farm there. But yeah, there's a lot of farming.
Anything else? Anything about the back table you want to tell them, or I don't know what you got?
Yeah, you feel free to look at I brought some stuff back from the back table. It's all, so there's different tribes in Kenya. This is all Maasai made stuff, which is basically people that live out in the bush. And so they'll bring it to Nairobi, or if you go on safari, they sell it. Different stuff that they make themselves. And so I have just like a wooden giraffe, a Maasai blanket, which the Maasai people, they wear those everywhere they go, a Maasai spear, and the necklace, like I said, that was actually made at Pangani by the women in the jewelry shop there. And then there's, I think, a mask back there. So.
A lot of witch doctors?
Yes, there are a lot of witch doctors. So, a lot of the stories are they'll go to the pharmacy if they have enough money to buy that medicine, but if they don't, then, basically the witch doctors are the options. And so there's a lot of that in the slums. All right, well, thank you for letting me share, and if you have more questions or would love to get involved with the microfinance stuff or the child sponsorship, I would love to talk about it with you. God's doing amazing things there, and
What's the website for that big tent or whatever?
if you go on cmfi.org is Christian Missionary Fellowship's website. Basically, you can find all the things on there, ways to give, and just partner with them. But God's really using the ministry there, reaching out to the people that just don't have anything physically, but they're also empowering them spiritually there too. And just glad that I can share. Thank you for allowing me to share.